BIM-Storm at a Distance. This is Kimon Onuma of Onuma Inc. Thank you to all the participants in the BIM-Storm. This is a follow-up to Workshop 1 and 2. In Workshop 2, we looked at rapidly deployable healthcare facilities such as from Jupe and CURA pods. And we created modules from these standards that are published on the web for CURA pods using the Program to BIM website. And we had Arthur Kurland from the University Health System participating in Workshop 2. And one of his questions was, can we use the CURA pods method of using containers to rapidly deploy healthcare facilities and then also disassemble them and move them to a new location as needed? So we created a module of 12 units, as was suggested by Broadus. The layout is not 100% complete, but conceptually, we wanted to get a rapid layout to see how it would fit on the site, and looked at all of the assets and content, and even did a scenario that said maybe it can go up more than one story. If you start stacking containers, is it even possible? We went ahead and tried that in this follow-up workshop. And we also took the requirements that were set up from Workshop 1 of what is required for a nursing area and a support stations for a healthcare facility. Again, this is an early layout. It might have some errors in it still because we still need input from healthcare designers, facility planners. And we got some early cost estimates based on this layout. So that's what we're going to look at today, looking at the University Health System's facility in San Antonio. And the scenario is, let's actually switch over live now. And what Arthur Kurland suggested, there was a site in San Antonio where there's an existing University Health System to the south of San Antonio City. And there's an large empty parking lot on what used to be, appears to be an elementary school site. He suggested we could actually do a layout there and do a study of how these CURA pods and temporary facilities can be laid out on this site. Here is the existing healthcare facility here, and to the north is the site that we selected, this triangular shaped site. So in the Onuma system, we actually laid out a preliminary site, did some studies on parking areas and areas where we could actually lay down some buildings. And the scenario is, if we start with the Jupe system, which is can be put on trailers and flat packs basically, and have 24 units on a trailer, what would it look like? We added a timeline to the building information models and said, what happens if we start building them in May sometime? What's the first thing that would happen? And that would be the trucks showing up with the Jupe pods. There's 24 per truck, 40-foot trailer that can fit as a flat pack. And then as you lay them out, each of the units is here. So these are kind of like tent-like structures. That's one solution. The next solution is looking at the CURA pods that we looked at earlier, the containerized system. This will take a few days longer maybe, but if it's rapidly deployed by trailers and stacked, then possibly we can get a flat area here. And if we keep going with the timeline, you can see the potential for a tower being put in there. So this is a total of 60 units in this tower and 48 in the flat area for the CURA pods themselves. We also tried to look at scenarios of where can we land. Arthur was suggesting a helicopter pad, so we have a helicopter landing area there. And logistically, does this work? That's the scenario that we have here. If we have a site that looks like this, and we have a place to load and offload trailers, a place to land new units, and then even to decommission these as we go along. And you can see in the timeline as it goes along, maybe in half a year or whatever, maybe it's time to take these units down and pack them up and move somewhere else. So that was a scenario here in San Antonio. Let's say there's no need for these units here anymore, and we can take them back to the AFRH site in Washington, D.C. So that's the next scenario. We're going to fly away from San Antonio, and we landed them in Washington, D.C. As we're flying there, I want to show one thing that we did with the scheduling. The scheduling was done in Excel and then imported into BIM. So the start and end date, a very simple Excel file. We essentially took this Excel schedule and layered it into the Washington, D.C. site 9 months later. So we're saying 9 months later or 6 months later, whatever the timeline might be, we have the AFRH site here, existing facilities. We identified an open area here that potentially could be used as a landing place to land these units. And let's start the timeline here and see what it looks like. So the first thing that happens is the trucks show up with the Jupe flat packs that then get placed on a site here. And then the next step would be to start building up the CURA pods, the containerized system. So a simple exercise, but when you start layering in time and logistics of how do you move around, does it make sense to even have it on the site? It might be a completely wrong idea, but to rapidly look at this and say, let's evaluate this. How does this look from a perspective of housing this many containers and units and having a helicopter landing area and having existing facilities, even an existing hospital that's decommissioned here. So that's a scenario for the AFRH site. And if we look closer at the units here, this is back to the San Antonio site. We looked at individual floor plans down to the equipment level. So because we started with these modules with equipment and asset lists, now these buildings, whether they're in Google Earth with all the assets inside it, but it's basically keeping track of the data that's required from an asset perspective. And we can run scenarios like this of how does it fit on the site? What does a nursing station look like? In a web-enabled browser. So that was the objective here, is if we're on the web, then we can rapidly collaborate with others. So that was the follow-up to Workshop 2. We're calling it kind of a 2B based on Arthur Kurland's input on the University Health System in San Antonio. And we've captured this in the PowerPoint slides as well. And also in 3D on iPads, we can now look at the units. This is the 5th floor, the 6th floor, actually the 4th floor. With the containerized system there. It might be too dense here, maybe 4 floors is too much, maybe it only can handle 2, maybe it can only handle 1, but the input that we need now is, does this make sense? And here's the early cost of one of the buildings, of 60 containers at $24 million for 60 containers, and the support facilities for that, and the site plan, and the overall view. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to continuing with this BIM storm at a distance.